I told my in-laws no to their money. A week later, my mother-in-law blamed me for her divorce. My name's David. I'm 36, a husband, a dad, and apparently, the guy who destroys marriages just by saying no. Here's the setup. My wife and I finally put our toddler into preschool. My in-laws are loaded. Millions in the bank, college funds for all the grandkids, the whole deal. They told us over and over, don't worry about the cost, we'll cover it. That's what the fund is for. They even did it for their other grandchild, no drama. So when enrollment day came, I didn't think twice. Papers were ready, my wife was excited, and I actually thought, for once, this might be straightforward. Then my phone buzzed. It was my mother-in-law. We'll only pay for the days your kid's actually sitting in the chair, not the full tuition. Now, anyone with a brain knows preschools don't work like a diner bill. You don't pay per plate. It's one flat price. And she knew that. That was the moment the penny dropped. This wasn't about money. It was about control. I texted back politely. Thanks, but we'll handle it ourselves. I figured that was the end. Big mistake. Within hours, she was blowing up my phone. First it was begging. Please, you'll put me in a terrible spot with your stepdad. He'll lose it. Just let me pay you on the side. Then came the guilt trip. I can't sleep. I've been crying for days. Listen, I'm not heartless. But come on. This is preschool tuition, not a funeral. And the more she pushed, the more obvious it became. She wasn't helping us. She was testing how much of a leash we'd accept. That's when my stepdad joined the show. He sent me one line. You're an asshole. Forget about the inheritance. I laughed. I don't live my life waiting for a check I may or may not see when I'm 60. But then he sent another message, something about how excited he was to watch our son while we're overseas. And suddenly, it didn't feel funny. It felt like a warning. We cut contact right there. No more babysitting, no more help. And that's when my MIL completely snapped. She called me out of the blue and said, "Got a pen?" Then she rattled off a list of every time she supposedly helped us, adding dollar amounts like she was reading from a fake invoice. Half of it never even happened. And then came the punchline. You're the reason my marriage is falling apart. Just like before. That's when I realized this wasn't the first time she'd used me as the scapegoat for her own disasters. It all started with coffee at their kitchen table. My mother-in-law was smiling like she'd just pulled off the deal of the century. My stepdad sat across from me, newspaper in hand, pretending not to listen. She leaned forward and said it again. Don't you worry about tuition. We've got it covered. That's why we set up the grandkids fund. We're happy to help. On the surface, it sounded generous. Almost too generous. Right then, my stepdad lowered his paper, gave me a look, and muttered, "Hope that school's worth it." That's his style. Take a family moment, toss in a jab, and act like it was nothing. My wife pretended she didn't hear. I let it slide. I'd learned by now that arguing with him was like trying to outshout a radio static. Pointless. The truth is, I wanted to believe her. We've heard the "I'll support you no matter what" line before. At our wedding, she promised to make things easy, and spent the night criticizing seating charts. For our son's birthday, she gave a flashy gift, and then reminded us of the price tag. Every helpful gesture came with a hook. But in that moment, I told myself, maybe this time's different. Maybe she actually just wants to do something nice for her grandson. I let myself relax. That was my mistake. Me, cautious trust, wanting peace. Her, full of confidence, like she owned the situation. A few days later, when the preschool papers were ready to sign, my phone buzzed. A new text from her. We'll pay, but only for the days he's physically in class. Not the full tuition. I froze. She knew tuition was a flat rate. She'd talked about it with us before. This wasn't ignorance. This was a pivot. And here's what I realized in that moment. This wasn't about money at all. It was about control. She wanted to set the terms, not help with the cost. I stared at that message, and my son tugged at my sleeve. "Daddy, come play." And I thought, this is the real reason I have to say no. If I cave here, I'm teaching him that someone else gets to pull the strings. So I typed back, "Thanks, but we'll cover it ourselves." At the time, I thought that was the end of it. I had no idea, it was just the opening round. Her text sat on my screen like a baited hook. We'll only pay for the days he's in class, not the full tuition. I knew exactly what that meant. Preschools don't run like hourly parking lots. You pay one flat rate, period. And she damn well knew it. My phone buzzed again. Same text. Resent as if she wanted to make sure I couldn't ignore it. I typed back short and polite. Thanks, but we'll handle it. I figured, fine, end of story. Wrong. That was just the starter pistol. An hour later, she called. Her voice had that shaky, I'm the victim, tone she always pulls out when she wants something. David, you can't do this to me. How am I supposed to explain to him that you refused our help? Please, just let me pay you on the side. We'll keep it between us. That's when it hit me. This wasn't charity. This was a side hustle of control. She wanted us tied to her, just with a cleaner paper trail. I pictured her 6 months down the road, waving a little notebook in my face. Remember the $3,200 I slipped you? Don't forget what we've done for you. No thanks. I told her again, we'll pay. Don't worry about it. That's when the tears came. I can't sleep. I cry every night. This is tearing me apart. Look, I'm not heartless. But come on. Preschool tuition doesn't ruin your marriage. Refusing it sure as hell shouldn't keep you up at night. Unless, of course, the real issue is losing control. Me, steady, resolved. Her, unraveling, putting on the victim mask. That night, I told my wife. She just shook her head. She's always done this. Guilt trips, fake tears. But this time, you did the right thing. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't playing along with her script. Like maybe we'd drawn a line she couldn't erase. But just as I started thinking we'd held firm, my stepdad decided it was his turn. And unlike her, he didn't waste time pretending to cry. The next day, my phone lit up again. This time it wasn't her. It was him. The message was short, blunt. You're an asshole. Forget the inheritance. I stared at the screen and almost laughed. Inheritance? I'd never planned my life around their money. But that wasn't the point. He wanted me to feel cut off, punished, like a dog who bit the hand that feeds. A second text followed, stranger than the first. Can't wait to watch your boy when you're out of the country. The words sat heavy. Was it sarcasm? A warning? A threat? I couldn't tell, but it felt wrong. Too deliberate. That was the moment my wife and I made a joint decision. Our son wouldn't be left alone with them again. Not for babysitting, not for a weekend, not for anything. The trust was gone. Not long after, she called again. Her voice wasn't shaky this time. It was sharp, loaded. Do you realize what you've done? He's furious. He's yelling at me nonstop. You've put me in an impossible position. And just like that, the blame shifted. It wasn't about him being controlling or her playing games. It was about me. In her mind, I was the trigger, the scapegoat, the reason their house was in chaos. Then she dropped the line that stopped me cold. You're tearing my marriage apart. Just like before. Those words weren't new. I'd heard them before, years ago, when I was still a kid. Back then, she said the same thing during her first divorce. She'd pointed at me, a boy in middle school, and told me I was the problem. That I was the reason she couldn't make it work. Now here I was, grown, with a family of my own, hearing it all over again. Different husband, same script. I hung up the phone and sat in silence. The weight of it wasn't sadness, it was clarity. This wasn't about tuition. It wasn't about inheritance. It wasn't even about their marriage. It was about control, the same cycle playing out again. Only this time, I wasn't a kid anymore. A week later she called again. No tears this time, no begging. Her tone was clipped, businesslike. Do you have a pen? She asked. I hesitated, then grabbed one. She began rattling off numbers. The vacation rental in March, 2,000. The groceries when you visited, 300. The birthday party, we covered half, remember? 800. On and on it went. Some of the amounts were inflated beyond reason. Some events never even happened. It was like she'd turned our lives into a ledger, one she'd been writing in her head for years. I let her finish. My hand hovered over the paper, but I didn't write a thing. Finally she said it. Add it all up, David. Look at what we've done for you. And this is how you repay us. Her voice cracked then, but not from sadness. From rage. You've destroyed everything. He's talking about leaving me. And it's your fault. Just like before. The words hit like a replay from my childhood. Different man, same accusation. Back then I didn't understand why she looked at me with that mix of fury and desperation. Now I did. I was the easiest target. I stayed quiet while she unloaded. Every complaint, every exaggerated sacrifice, every dollar she claimed we owed her. When she finally stopped, the silence was thick. I could hear her breathing on the other end, waiting for me to argue, to defend myself, to apologize. I didn't give her that. I hung up. My wife found me sitting at the kitchen table, phone face down, jaw tight. I told her what happened, every detail. She didn't look surprised. She's not keeping score, David, she said quietly. She's rewriting history. I nodded. It wasn't about numbers. It was about control dressed up as generosity. About rewriting me into the villain of her story so she didn't have to face the truth about her marriage. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. She'd been doing it all along. After that call, things went quiet for a while. Too quiet. No texts, no calls, no surprise drop-ins. For a second, I almost believed she'd let it go. Then one evening, my phone lit up. Her name. I answered. She skipped the greetings. We need to meet. Face to face. This can't go on. Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. Like she'd been practicing in the mirror. I didn't answer right away. My wife was watching me, her eyes saying exactly what I was thinking. Don't fall for it. But I agreed. Not because I thought it would fix anything, but because part of me wanted to hear her say it all again to my face. No hiding behind texts or fake numbers on a piece of paper. We met at a diner halfway between our houses. Neutral ground. She slid into the booth across from me, oversized sunglasses still on inside. For a moment, it was almost normal. She asked about my son, about work. Small talk. But it didn't last. Then her voice dropped. You've ruined my marriage, David. He's threatening to leave. Do you understand what you've done to me? I didn't flinch. I just stared back. She leaned in closer. All because you refused a little help. All because you had to prove a point. Do you know what that makes you? Selfish. Just like your father. There it was again. History looping back on itself. The old wound she never let heal. In her story, I was always the scapegoat. I pushed my coffee away and stood. I'm not a kid anymore, I said quietly. I'm not taking the blame for your choices. Her face froze. No tears this time, no pleading. Just pure shock, like I'd ripped away the script she'd been reading from all her life. I left her sitting there in the booth, clutching her sunglasses like a lifeline. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't felt since this started. Relief. Not victory, not joy, just relief. Because I finally understood that saying no wasn't selfish. It was survival. For a couple of weeks, everything went quiet. No calls, no late-night guilt trips, no sudden explosions from my stepdad. It was eerie, like the calm after a storm. Then a message popped up on my phone. Short, almost gentle. Maybe we should sit down, clear the air, start fresh. I showed it to my wife. She didn't even blink. She's setting the hook again. Don't fall for it. Part of me agreed. But another part of me, maybe the kid still trying to earn his mother's approval, wanted to believe. Wanted to think maybe she'd realized what she'd done. Maybe she was ready to stop the games. We met at her house. The moment I walked in, she put on a smile I hadn't seen in years. Soft voice, careful words, as if nothing had happened. She even hugged me at the door. For a while, it worked. We sat in the living room, talking about my son, about vacations we'd taken. She asked questions, nodded at my answers. She played the role of a caring mother again, and I almost let myself believe it was real. Then came the pivot. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. You know, David, we could have avoided all this if you'd just accepted our help. That's all we ever wanted. To make things easier for you. I didn't answer. Her eyes hardened. The mask slipped. And now look where we are. He's still furious. He says I let you disrespect him. And if he leaves, I'll have no one to blame but you. It was the same script, polished for another round. The false apology, the reset, then the knife. I stood up. This isn't clearing the air. This is you reloading the same gun and aiming it again. Her smile vanished. You'll regret this, she snapped. One day, you'll see what you've done. I walked out. No hug, no promises. Just the slam of her door behind me. Driving home, I realized the quiet hadn't been peace. It had been preparation. She was never letting go of the story where I was the villain. But I also realized something else. I didn't need her version of the story anymore. I had my own. The next strike didn't come directly from her. It came sideways, the way it always does when she's running out of moves. A message landed in our family group chat. From my stepdad. Short, sharp. Don't bother showing up for holidays. We're done. That was the expected blow. I'd braced for it. Exile, the big dramatic cutoff. But a minute later, another message appeared. This time from her. Everyone should know the truth. David has turned his back on us. He refused our help and humiliated this family. He's tearing us apart. And just like that, she'd gone public. Cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone reading it, everyone dragged into her theater. My phone started buzzing with side messages. Some relatives confused, others angry, a few telling me to just accept the help, to keep the peace. Exactly what she wanted, pressure from all sides, a chorus to back up her script. But something shifted in me then. I didn't feel cornered. I felt free. Because for the first time, the mask was off for everyone, not just me. They could see the pattern if they wanted to. They could watch her rewrite history in real time. I didn't respond. Not a word. My silence was the loudest answer I'd ever given her. Hours later, she tried one more time, this time in private. A voicemail, her voice breaking, half whisper, half threat. If he leaves me, it's on you. I won't survive it. And neither will you, when everyone knows what you've done. I saved the message, played it for my wife. We both sat there in the kitchen, the weight of it hanging between us. And then we both started laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Same playbook, new act. That night, I blocked both of them. Numbers, email, social media. Every door shut. The double punch wasn't what she said, it was what I realized. She thought she was cutting me out. In reality, I'd already walked away. Weeks passed. The silence felt strange at first, almost like the house was missing a background noise we'd gotten too used to. No late-night calls, no guilt-soaked voicemails, no insults flying through the group chat. For a moment, I let myself believe it was over. Maybe they'd finally burned themselves out. Maybe she realized there was nothing left to twist. We slipped back into normal life, school runs, dinners at the table, quiet weekends. My son was laughing more, my wife was sleeping better. It felt like we'd stepped out of a storm into steady ground. Then an envelope showed up in the mailbox. No return address. Inside was a folded letter in her handwriting. It started soft, almost tender. Families fight. Words are said. But at the end of the day, blood is blood. We should find our way back to each other. For a second, I almost wanted to believe it. The tone was different, less accusation, more reconciliation. But halfway down the page, the mask slipped. You have caused a lot of damage. He is still furious, and I don't know how much longer I can hold this marriage together. You need to own your part in this mess. You need to fix it. There it was again. The hook, the pivot, the olive branch that turned into a noose. I folded the letter and set it down. My wife asked what it said. I told her, same as always. A handshake with a knife behind the back. We didn't argue about it. We didn't even discuss responding. We both knew the answer. For a few days, though, I felt that old pull. The hope that maybe things could go back to normal. That maybe the storm really had passed. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't resolution. This was the quiet before the final break. And sure enough, the break was coming. The last call came on a Tuesday night. I saw her name flash on the screen, and for a second, my thumb hovered over decline. But something in me wanted to hear it, wanted to close the loop with my own ears. I answered. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. David, we can still fix this. All you have to do is admit you were wrong. Take the help. Say you overreacted. Then we can move forward. There it was, her final offer. A deal dressed up as peace. I let the silence hang before I said, no. The calm shattered. Her tone sharpened instantly, the mask ripped away. You selfish bastard. You've ruined my life. Do you understand that? If he walks out that door, it's on you. And don't think anyone will forgive you for what you've done. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just ended the call. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I blocked her number. Permanently. That was the final break. Not a dramatic shouting match. Not a drawn-out argument. Just one word. No. And a click. The next day, I gathered every message, every voicemail, every letter. I put them in a folder on my computer. Not because I planned to use them, but because I wanted the reminder. A record of the line we'd drawn. My wife asked if I felt guilty. Not anymore. I told her. Not even a little. Because for the first time, I realized this wasn't about saving their marriage or protecting her feelings. It was about protecting my own family. About making sure my son grew up without learning that love means keeping score, or that help means control. The bridge was burned, and I wasn't looking back. It's been months since that last call. Life has settled into something quieter, something steadier. My son runs into preschool every morning, backpack bouncing on his shoulders, no strings attached to his laughter. My wife and I pay the bill ourselves. It's not easy, but it's ours. We haven't heard from them directly since. No surprise visits, No guilt-ridden voicemails. Sometimes there are ripples, relatives mentioning things they've heard, cousins asking why we don't show up for holidays anymore. But I don't explain. I don't justify. I just smile and change the subject. Because here's what I've learned. Saying no doesn't make you selfish. It doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. For years, I let her script define me. I was the ungrateful son, the problem child, the man who couldn't appreciate help. She played the victim, and I carried the blame. Not anymore. Now I see the pattern for what it is. Promises that come with strings. Gifts that turn into invoices. Tears that turn into accusations. It was never about generosity. It was always about control. And the inheritance they threatened to cut me out of? Let them keep it. I'd rather leave my son an example than a bank account filled with strings. I want him to see that a man's worth isn't measured by what he inherits, but by the boundaries he defends. Looking back, I realized she was right about one thing. I did change their marriage. But not in the way she thinks. I didn't destroy it. I just refused to hold it up for them anymore. And once I stepped out from under the weight, it collapsed on its own. Do I feel guilty? No. I feel relieved. Because now, when I tuck my son into bed at night, I know the story he'll grow up with isn't about a grandmother's money or a step-grandfather's threats. It's about a father who chose dignity over control. And that's the kind of inheritance worth passing down.